Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Striking Movie Podcast. I'm Val.
I'm Patrick. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a lot of movies to cover today, most of which I have not seen. Well, I've seen two of them.
But... Yeah, and I've seen three, so it's really just one more than you, so that's totally fine. The first one that we're going to talk about is Rise. This is a Disney Plus original movie, and I am a sucker for sports movies. I don't play a lot of sports. I don't go to a lot of sports games, but for some reason I love sports movies, the genre, and this movie Rise is based on a real life story, which makes me like it even more. What's really cool about this movie is that you kind of get to see, if you're into basketball at all, you get to kind of see a time that you may remember and reminisce about. A couple weeks ago, we had the movie Hustle, which I really enjoyed. Also kind of based on real characters, and stuff like that. And then we get this movie. Now with Rise, I don't know how much you know about this movie, Patrick, and how much you're kind of into that kind of genre. I don't know. Are you into sports films at all?
I only periodically. I'll be honest with you. For me, I liked Hustle, but it was okay. I watched that movie once. That's my basketball movie for the year. So I had a really hard time getting up interest in this one. But the real life angle and the Nigeria Greece thing interested me, and then my screener went wonky, so I haven't.
Oh no. Well, it's rated PG, so this is the family movie pick of the weekend. If you want to sit at home with the family, turn on Disney Plus, and like he said, it's kind of a story that's really cool. So you've got this family who go from Nigeria to Greece, and you have sons who really are learning from their parents. They are figuring out how to live inside the system. When they went to Greece, basically they took the parents' cards, identification, everything like that. And going through that system, basically they go, and every month or so, they're trying to get citizenship to Greece, right? But in order to get citizenship, they have to show that they're working. And in order to work, they've got to have citizenship. So it's this crazy back and forth that you've probably had to deal with or seen it in many countries. And so they're trying to do the right thing, but they can't. So they have to figure out, as parents, like, how can we work the system, still be legal, still take care of our family? And they've got these sons who they don't really want to let out of their sight, because they're foreigners in this country. But the boys were born in Greece, most of them. There's one brother that's not. And they kind of learn, they're these tall Nigerians that learn basketball at a very late age. They see basketball because they usually play football, soccer, and they see basketball, and they kind of have to go out of their way to play it. And they become really, really good. And they see that as their way out. And there's a happy ending at the end of the movie. Again, it's based on a true story, but it's a really great family film. It does have, a little bit of that formula that they add to any kind of sports movie where, they're down on their luck. They've got to figure out how to do it. You see like the training and the community come together, and then the happy ending, which is, it's really fun for kids and families. I enjoyed it. I watched it by myself. I give this one a B-.
Cool. It's one that I'm definitely going to be watching. I watched like the first 20 minutes of it and last night, and I got tired and thought I'll watch the rest of it in the morning, and then it wouldn't let me play it. So I'm definitely going to be watching it.
Nice. The next one is one that I haven't seen and that I'm really intrigued about.
Oh, yes. Talking about sports movies. So we're on the same page in not being big sports people in real life. I'll enjoy a sporting event occasionally in real life. I haven't been to one in a long time. But since I was a kid, I've had a bit of a dislike for sports, and the reason for it is that I am just not a person who likes the idea that a winner requires having a loser, and that's always kind of been a downer for me with sports. And it's one of the reasons why The Phantom of the Open is my favorite sports movie in a long time. The Phantom of the Open is a movie starring Mark Rylance, who is just one of the greatest actors out there. I would watch him in anything. I love him. He was so fantastic earlier this year in The Outfit. It's a true story about Maurice Flitcroft, a British crane operator who basically his three sons got old enough that they were doing their own things, and he needed to find an enthusiasm of his own. And somehow he got this cockamamie idea, since he heard that you could win $10,000 in the British Open. He decided he was going to compete in the British Open, despite the fact that he was not a golfer. So
you know what I'm going to do today?
Yeah. So he basically, through a bizarre series of just misunderstandings and a little misrepresentation, he got accepted into the British Open and played the worst round of golf in the history of the British Open. But it made him an overnight star because he was so out of place in it, but yet it's kind of an Eddie the Eagle kind of story. He just enjoyed what he was doing and seemed so oddly out of place. And he was totally unfazed. I mean, the only thing he really said is that he felt like the score didn't really accurately reflect his playing, which I love. And of course, it was a big embarrassment to the British Open that he somehow made it in there and played this horrible round of golf. And they banned him. They found ways to keep him out.
Oh, no.
But he actually entered multiple times under pseudonyms, once the first time wearing a false mustache. And all of this is true. All of this, it really happened. It's a wild story about a guy who just had something he wanted to do and just didn't like being told, no, you can't do this. For me, the thing that there's a lot to love about this movie, the thing that I really think they did incredibly well from the get-go is that by the time the opening credits is over, you love this guy and have an intense loyalty to him because of his love for his family. He marries a woman played by Sally Hawkins from The Shape of Water, who I think could be an Oscar contender for this film. She already has one son who was born out of wedlock, and he is very eager to step in and be a dad to this kid, and then has two more kids, twin sons, who Val knows that I'm a twin. So the characters of his twin sons who want to be professional disco dancers and end up as his caddies and will switch. Well, he has one caddy, but the two twins dress the same and switch off throughout the game. So neither one of them has to get bored doing it the whole time. It's just a quirky, fun, exceptionally well done feel-good movie with great acting and just a delightful sense of humor but at the heart of it is the fact that you really care about these characters. It's also one of the best marriages I've seen portrayed in a film in a while, in terms of an idea. I mean, like, these two characters really love each other. The wife adores and supports him, but she's not the obligatory wife character. She has a strong identity of her own and brings her own character to the movie and is as important to the story in her own way as he is. It was just a movie that really made me happy and made me think this is why I like little movies. This is it's very distinctly British if you like the British style of humor and just that kind of off-kilter sensibility. It's really delightful. I give this one probably an A-. It's somewhere between an A- and a B. I want to give it. It's hard for me to give it anything less than an A- because there's nothing I would change about it, and it's just so delightful that I really highly recommend it.
All right. Well, I definitely am going to put that on my list. I didn't have time to get to that one this week. The next movie we're going to talk about is one that I really can't believe that I went and saw. I love thrillers. I'm not a huge horror fan, but I do love like a good thriller mystery. But at the same time, I'm so easily scared that I'm very kind of particular about the ones that I go and see. And when I found out that Ethan Hawke was starring in this movie, but that it's also based on short stories by a specific child of a regular horror thriller author, I thought that would be really amazing. And it's called The Black Phone. Do you know who he's related to?
I do not. I unfortunately missed this film. I say unfortunately. I'm not in a rush to see it because I'm not a horror fan. I love Ethan Hawke, but there is very little in the world that bores me more than supernatural horror.
So Joe Hill is the writer of the Black Hole Lake short story, and
the Black Phone, not the Black Hole.
The Black Phone, sorry. But he is Stephen King's son.
Oh.
So he wanted to make sure that when he was published, that he would get published on his own. And so Joe Hill is the name that he used when he published. I guess he has a few other names as well, but this is the one for The Black Phone, right? Correct. And I don't know. I think you might actually like this one. The child actors in this movie are really, really good. I am, and this is probably going to make you kind of think differently of me for a minute, but Ethan Hawke is hit or miss for me. I either love him in a movie or I don't love him. Like there's no really middle ground for me. I love him. I really liked him in Moon Knight, the series. I really liked that character and how it was kind of this big departure from what he usually plays. And in this movie, he plays the ultimate bad guy, but he's actually not the star of the film. This kid, Finney Shaw, who's a 13-year-old boy, is the star of the film, and he's played by Mason Thomas and does a fantastic job. He basically plays the brother of Gwen, and Gwen and Finney kind of have this dad who's a little bit abusive that's played by Jeremy Davies, who I absolutely love, and I feel like we don't get to see him in enough movies. I'm
sorry, I didn't mean. Jeremy Davies, to me, is one of those actors who he created such an immortal character at a fairly young age that it's been hard for him to branch out from that, because for those who don't know, he plays Corporal Upham in Saving Private Ryan, the guy who speaks German and then freezes up on the stairs. It's such an immortal performance that should have been a serious Oscar contender.
Yes.
That he's always great, but I feel like he struggled with finding roles that to take him out of that shadow. It's like he peaked at a young age, and it's been hard for him to live up to, but it's always great to see him.
Yeah, when I saw him, because I really tried to go into this movie with little to nothing, like I do most movies. I really liked the poster, the artwork that they sent out. I found out Ethan Hawke was in it, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this a chance because it's really a different thing. And then as soon as I saw Jeremy Davies on screen, I was like, okay. And his part is it's a small part. He does play the dad, but it is really meaty. He has a lot of moments that you get to see a big range from him, but he doesn't have a lot of screen time. Who gets a lot of screen time is Finney and Gwen, which is Mason and Madeline. Now, Madeline, she really just steals the movie. She's the younger sister, and you probably, if you are into Ant-Man at all, and you saw the Ant-Man and Wasp movie, she plays the young Hope Van Dyne. So she plays the young Hope in that. So you're probably going to watch the movie and be like, she looks so familiar. She's so fantastic. She's got so much spunk. And basically what happens is, without giving too much away, there is a person in this very small town in Denver that is kidnapping children. And Finney ends up being one of the people that's kidnapped, and his little sister fights and fights and fights with some different things that she has going on that I don't want to give away, to find her brother, and supernatural elements help him along with his sister get away, basically. And I just think it was such an interesting take on this kind of genre that I haven't seen before, because going in, I'm like, it's like, as soon as I the first 5 minutes, I'm like, it's about a kidnapper. I don't want to see bad things happen to kids. Right. But at the same time, the way that they do it, like, they don't show, like, you see a little bit of blood, but there's not like a lot of gore. Like, there's a couple of moments, but they're quick and they're necessary, but there's not a lot of gore. It is a lot of suspense. It is very smart. There are moments that are created, and most of it happens in the basement of this one house, which I also think is very cool how they utilize this moment. And there was a quote from Stephen King on what he thought about the movie, and I want to bring it up, because as soon as I read that, and then I saw the movie, I was like, okay, it's right. And he described the black phone as Stand By Me in hell. So if the movie Stand By Me, which you remember, it's you know, these young boys that are helping each other get through this element, there is that element of these young boys that are kidnapped, and in a very supernatural, beyond kind of way, they help through this moment. But the way that the story is told is really kind of neat, and I give this movie a B+, and that's usually not where I would be. There are a few moments where what I do when I go to horror films, thriller films, is I put on a hoodie and then I just slowly pull the strings of the to make myself feel comfortable. There was only a few moments like that, but that's what you want with this type of film. So
sure, it's one that I'll see at some point. On one hand, the supernatural element is interesting in terms of giving it a twist, and helping with the fact that I'm like, I don't really want to see a movie about kidnapping, and that in terms of getting scared, it's very, very hard for me to get scared by anything that has a supernatural element in it, because it just doesn't feel real to me. But that's me. But that being said, I want to be clear. I am not going to judge the movie at all without seeing it. I'm pretty against that. I want to see the film. I just have not had a chance yet, but it sounds interesting. You've definitely piqued my interest.
Yeah, it's definitely, the kids steal the show with this one. And the cinematography is really fantastic, and the pacing. It was exactly the right amount of time for me. Now, if you're big into thriller horrors, it may not be enough for you, but for me, it was enough story, great acting, great coloring, cinematography, and good pacing. Like, it didn't draw things out. You know what I mean? It was really Like everything had a meaning, had a point, got there, and it wasn't just these long drawn out, like trying to get you scared and then nothing, you know.
And I love it when a film can shoot in only a couple of locations in a confined space and still feel cinematic. I watched a screener yesterday for, I can't say what it is yet because it's under embargo, so I can't say it's crap yet. But but it's a movie that had some vague potential, but it is in a very confined location, and the director just has no idea how to make it visually interesting in that tight space, and just completely chokes. So it's always really nice when that is accomplished.
We're going to jump into the big movie of the weekend, and that's Elvis.
Yes. So this one was an interesting experience for me because it's very rare that I go into. First of all, music biopics are definitely not my genre. But what's really rare for me is to go into a theater, and even more so leaving it, for a music biopic, feeling like I think I was the person in the room who really knew the story and everything about. I know a lot about Elvis lore, everything Elvis. I did a deep dive into him for a project I was doing that kind of fell by the wayside, but I really, really know Elvis Presley to an almost embarrassing extent, all the little details about his life. So I was really fascinated to see this. Baz Luhrmann, who directed it, to me, to call it an inspired match of director to material almost doesn't do it justice. It's such an obvious match because for me, Baz Luhrmann is a lot like Elvis. When I was in my early to mid 20s, I had a very set idea of what a well-made film was and what it had to achieve to be a well-made film. And I saw Moulin Rouge, and Baz Luhrmann completely blew my mind and opened me up to a wider variety of styles of film and what can work when used for the right movie. So really, in describing that's what Elvis Presley did for rock and roll. This movie, it's not Luhrmann's best film. It is, if you're an Elvis fan, it's a must-see. Austin Butler, who plays Elvis, is so amazingly dead on in his performance. He just becomes Elvis. And, it's a cliche to say that back to Rami Malek and these other performances, you say it becomes him, but every last detail of Elvis is there, and he does the singing himself. As it moves further into the film and he gets older, they do mix in more of Elvis's real voice along with it, but all the younger stuff is totally Austin Butler. The performance to me was just captivating. The most interesting off-the-wall aspect of this movie, and when you say the most off-the-wall aspect of a Baz Luhrmann movie, that's saying a lot, was the casting of Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker, and who is Elvis's manager, the guy who discovered him, made him into a star, and also exploited him to just unforgivable levels. It's a bit of casting that's been very controversial. People are really mixed on whether or not it works. It's a heavy makeup role, which is not entirely convincing. He's doing a bit of a silly accent, but when in context, when you understand the full story of who Colonel Parker was, the accent makes sense. For me, what worked about the casting of Tom Hanks in the role was that, as somebody who does know the Elvis story really well and has always wondered, what on earth did Elvis see in this guy? How did he get pulled in to let his whole life be controlled by Colonel Parker? If you cast Tom Hanks in the role, there's a twinkle in the eyes and just a lovability, even in this kind of villainous role, that there's a sequence where after Elvis's mother dies, where the Colonel talks to him, where I felt I'm really seeing the relationship that was built and how this guy made Elvis loyal to him to a point of complete blindness. That to me was mesmerizing. On one hand, I like the fact that, you know, we've had Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man and The Doors before that. A lot of we've seen the descent into self-destructive behavior many times. On one hand, I was not keen to relive that so much because we've seen it so many times. I do feel that Luhrmann fell so in love with the legend of Elvis that he had a hard time pulling back the curtain on that, and that he portrayed a watered down. Elvis Presley was an incredibly self-destructive guy. Colonel Parker deserved a lot of blame for what happened and ultimately was the villain of the story. But Elvis, the extent to which he descended into paranoid delusions, thought the Beatles were Russian spies. I mean, this is a guy who ate a pound of bacon for breakfast every morning. And we don't see a lot of, we see the reckless spending, but we don't see a lot of the really intense recklessness and destructiveness of the way Elvis lived that led up to his death. That would be my complaint with the film. I did really enjoy it as a striking spectacle and as a loving tribute to the Elvis legend. For me, if you want to see, it wasn't always the deepest, the length and the approach. It does a great job of portraying the Colonel Parker story in terms of Elvis himself. It leaves a lot of questions unanswered. If you want to get to know more specifics about Elvis, I would recommend the 2005 miniseries starring Jonathan Rhys Meyers as Elvis, if you can get past the fact that Randy Quaid is in it. But on the whole, I like this movie a lot. I give it a strong B+. It's not a masterpiece. It's emotionally, it's probably Luhrmann's least satisfying film, but for me, it was still an entertaining summer movie, and it's my favorite music biopic in quite a while.
Awesome. I agree. I give it a B+ as well. So those are in theaters this weekend, with Rise being on Disney Plus. Next week, what do we have coming up next week?
So next week is it's a bit of a smaller week, but we do have some really exciting indie films coming up. Mr. Malcolm's List, starring Frida Pinto. Official competition with Antonio Banderas and Penelope Cruz. We also have Minions: The Rise of Gru. So there are some big ones coming up next week.
Cool. And I will be recording from LA next week, so we will be here, but I will not have the same background. So like us and subscribe below. Please follow us on our Facebook page and let us know what you thought of these movies. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.